When I first saw this car, I wasn't sure exactly which direction was supposed to be forward. But after spending a little time with it, I have to admit, I really love it. It's a bit like a concept car that has made it all the way from the drawing board to reality without much adjustment. It's quirky, but there is a sense of occasion every time you get into it, and most people I've shown it to are really curious about it, including the postman. However, it does have one major flaw, but more of that later. Like the Kia Soul EV I had a few weeks ago, the Honda E has looks that divide opinion. But where the majority are not enamoured with the Soul, and only a few love it, the converse is true of the Honda E. Most people love its unusual retro feature appearance. The basic colour choice is yellow, but for £550 extra you can have grey, black, blue or white. This grey car is particularly stylish, with the black and metallic silver elements offsetting the grey perfectly. The rear privacy glass, which is standard on all models, and hidden rear door handles give a two-door coupe look, but with 4 doors. You'll notice something missing on this car. Yes, there are no wing mirrors. Instead, you get these rear-facing cameras in pods that are much more flush with the body, further accentuating the sleek look. Despite being a short car in length, it's actually quite a tall car, 1.5 metres, which is almost as much as the Nissan Leaf and Zoe. There are 2 versions of the Honda E, Standard and Advanced, which cost £2,500 extra, the main differences between which we'll explain shortly. In appearance terms, not much, although the standard version comes with 16-inch alloys, but the premium Advance includes these rather attractive 17-inch wheels instead, though you can still choose the 16-inch ones if you want. As you approach, the door handles pop open. In theory anyway, you need to be away from it for a bit longer, then you have to pull it again to actually open the door. Then, you've got these hidden door handles in the back here, which are pretty neat and work pretty well. First, let's just enjoy how spacious this is for the front seat passengers. There's loads of leg room and plenty of headroom for a tall driver, and then you get an even greater sense of space if you open up this glass roof. These are the standard grey cloth seats, although you can pay £1,395 more for black or brown leather. They're heated too, whichever version of the Honda E you buy, although you need the Advance to have a heated steering wheel as well. This central area has these removable dividers so you can put them in different places for different size items. There's also a rather nice cup holder at the front here, and you can slip your phone into this rather natty little pouch here. Above this, and this is only available in the Advance, you have this regular power slot, and as you can see it supports up to 1500 watts, and you've got an HDMI port as well as the usual more expected USB chargers and of course the car power charger. This is presumably for adding something like a DVD player or a media streamer, so you can actually watch video from that device. None of the electric cars we've reviewed recently have a particularly large glove box, and this one is no different, although it is a bit bigger than the Corsa E or Zoe. There's also plenty of headroom in the back, but actually not much knee room, so if you were 6 foot you'd find this a bit cramped. Fine if you're a kid or average size like me. On the plus side, you do get these 2 USB ports in the back, but no separate AC controls. We always like a nice pouch in the back, and this car has one on each side. Despite using cloth trim, it still has quite a premium look and feel about it. And so now we come to the first smaller drawback of the Honda E. The boot is really small. With just a few bags, it's already quite cramped, and 2 of these are the charging cables, which don't actually have anywhere else to go. We felt optimistic about this area here because so many EVs have a cubby, but actually it's just a little bit of space for a few items for maintenance. On its own, this boot is 171 litres, which is not that great. If you pop this out and pop the seats back, you get 157 litres, which is a bit more respectable, but as you can see, the rear seats are not 60-40 divided. And finally we come to the big drawback with the Honda E. It only has a 35.5 kilowatt hour battery, and that just gives it 137 miles of WLTP range. And if you've got 17-inch wheels like this one, it only has 131 miles of range. In fact, in practice we found that you'd scarcely get 100 miles out of it. However, underneath this rather natty central enclosure is a CCS2 charging port. You can see you've got the usual flaps, one over each part. The AC charging is up to 6.6 kilowatts, and if you use that, it only takes a little over 4 hours to charge the car to full. If you use 50 kilowatt DC, which is the maximum this car supports, it takes 31 minutes to get to 80%, which again is pretty decent, which means you could theoretically stop off for a quick lunch and you'll have a full car again. So if you've got the standard 14p a kilowatt hour supply, this car costs about 3.6p per mile, which is a little on the high side, but nothing too much to be worried about. So under here you have a lot of electronic equipment, but actually not the motor, because that's in the back. The low range of the Honda E is the really major drawback with this car. It really limits it to local usage. You wouldn't want to drive it from London to Scotland, or even London to Birmingham for that matter. Given that range anxiety comes near the top of most surveys about why people don't want to choose an EV, it's really odd that Honda has delivered a brand new car that absolutely induces range anxiety on a regular basis. Despite the full-length LCD panel, there's still a full set of discrete controls. For example, you have full-size knobs on the air conditioning system and lots of buttons. All the major car controls are in this central console, starting with the park button. The reverse is recess, but you don't have to press anything else, you just pull that back. And there's neutral, big square button, that is for the drive, and this operates the e-pedal type thing, a bit like Nissan's, where you can have single pedal control and full regenerative. Then further back you have an electronic parking brake, and this button, or switch rather, goes up and down, selecting between sport and normal driving modes. The steering wheel has the usual array of complicated buttons for things like volume control, the voice operation, and you've got some stuff here for operating the cruise control, and these paddles here, this is the plus one, for increasing or decreasing the regenerative braking level. You also have sturdy steering wheel stalks for the lighting, and this one over here for the windscreen wipers. The dashboard display behind the steering wheel has a useful level of information, including charge level, and certain safety measures pop up there as well, including the speed limit. Finally, we come to the huge full-width LCD panel dashboard. The first thing to point out is that the wing mirrors are replaced by these two side displays. With the advanced spec, you can also configure this rear view mirror as a camera. However, this isn't perfect, because if you're long-sighted like I am, you have a bit of trouble focusing on that. We also had a problem when we were driving this car in the rain, that a bit of droplet of water went over the camera and this became invisible for a period of time. Then there's this dual 12.3 inch LCD panel bit in the middle, which gives loads of room for things like settings. You know, if the setting has an extra panel, you can see a load of information there. There's DAB radio, there is other types of radio, FM radio, and of course sat nav. There's support for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. There's also a nice Easter egg in the form of this aquarium where you can actually feed the fish. You can see that they go for the food, which is you know, hours of fun. Of course you can't have it on while you're driving. The sat nav is colourful and it has clear directions. However, we have a few issues with the way it actually finds addresses. So if I put in a full postcode here, you can see it's taking quite a long time to find it. You can see it's got a rather nice 360 view on the reversing camera. All the way through this video we've talked about two different versions of the Honda E, and we haven't really mentioned the main difference between those, because apart from a little bit of trim difference and the fact you can get 17-inch wheels, the big difference is the motor power that you can have with the Advance. The Advance version, which is £2,500 more, has 154 PS, whereas the standard version only has 136. One of the things that we should point out, which hopefully we illustrated when we looked at under the bonnet, is that the engine in this car is actually, the motor rather, is in the back. It's over the rear wheels, so this is a rear wheel drive car, which is not like a lot of the hatchbacks that we've tested, EV hatchbacks. That gives this car a very different dynamic. It's also got the batteries under the floor plan, like a proper EV, like a Tesla. So even though it's quite tall, it's got a low center of gravity. So it's really quite fun to drive. I mean, it's not that fast. The standard version takes 9 seconds to get to 60, and the Advance with a more powerful motor takes 8.3 seconds which isn't huge. I mean, that's slower than the Corsa E, for example, or the Kia Soul EV, but because it's got rear wheel drive, you don't get any torque steer, so you get a really good kind of sense of fun. It's got that kind of rear wheel drive thing that people love about BMWs, for example, although obviously not at that kind of level of performance. This car doesn't have quite the kind of cheeky nippiness, but it's still a nippy car. It's a word we really like, nippy. Around town, you've got that kind of really fast speed off the lights, which is, you know, most EVs are famous for, but this car's got it particularly well because of that rear wheel drive. You don't have any torque steer to worry about. Honda actually claims a 50-50 weight distribution for this car, and you can kind of believe it because it does feel very well balanced. The steering is weighted and reasonably precise. This isn't quite a driver's car, but it's definitely fun. You get the usual array of safety features, although there's so many cameras on this car, you get a very good picture of what's around you. The advanced version of the Honda E includes something called Parking Pilot, which is automatic parking, although we found it's a bit complicated to use. The cameras will detect road signs and notify you of the speed limit if they see them. So we've just passed the 50 speed limit sign, and you can see this has just changed to 50. You do get some excellent visibility from these camera-based wing mirrors. However, the one on the right is obscured by your hand on the steering wheel, so you have to move it so you can actually see it. The lane keep assist function is reasonably effective. It gives you a notification and a slight nudge on the steering wheel. However, the warnings do sometimes stay on the console longer than you really need them. The collision braking mitigation system is Honda's name for automatic emergency braking, and it's standard on all the cars. There's adaptive cruise control across both cars, which is always a welcome feature, although it's a little bit complicated to use. However, blind spot notification with cross-traffic monitoring, which is something that is used when you're reversing out of a car park space, for example, that's only available on the advanced version of this car. Honda's received some criticism for the pricing of this car. However, we think that at $26,660 for the basic version and $2,500 more for the advanced is not necessarily that expensive until you factor in that small battery. You also get a typical 8-year, 100,000 mile warranty on the battery for 70% capacity, but all the other bits of the cars have a varying different warranty level, so maybe 3 years for some types of corrosion and 12 years for others. However, the insurance group is quite high. The basic car is 25, which is okay, but the advanced is 29, which is much higher than the Corsa E or a Zoe in either of their top specs. So let's just feel how fast this car accelerates. Check out this turning circle. This is one of the tightest turning circles we've ever seen in any car. It's almost up with a London taxi. I have to admit, I'm really torn by the Honda E. I love the way it looks, particularly in the colour scheme that we were given right here. I also really like the way it drives. It gives you a real sense of occasion when you get in it. You feel like you really enjoy the driving experience. However, that low range is almost a fatal flaw and really limits the kind of usages you can put this to. So, you know, if you've got home charging and you just want a car for going to the shops, the odd trip to the gym, and for general kind of local usage, it's absolutely brilliant and you'll really enjoy owning it, but you wouldn't want to go any further than that.